Hello friends, back here with the 70s Fender Super Reverb, and I've got a lot of parts on order for all of the amps actually on the workbench right now, but I don't want to wait too long to get working on these, so we're going to try and knock out as much as we can today, and this will be a long process. I'm sure there's a lot to do to this amplifier. If you haven't already seen the first video where I go through kind of everything wrong with it, everything we notice that needs to be changed, check that out. The link to the playlist will be in the description, as well as any future videos of the series. There's always a playlist for every amp I work on, just so you guys know. But tonight, we're going to focus on changing all of these cathode bypass caps. So all these white Mallories you see here. And as discussed in the first episode, we're going to return this back to how the schematic shows, which is having two cathode bypass caps here instead of one over here and one here. And then this is missing a cathode bypass cap right here. That's just something they did in the mid-70s where they kind of skimped out a little bit and cut corners in a lot of areas. So we will be adding one there. And then, replacing these two. And in general, we'll try and kind of bow out the resistors to kind of do that and have the two cathode bypass caps in the middle. However, it depends on really the lead length of the resistors themselves. So we might have to do something like they did here from the factory, where they kind of go one in a row. We'll, take that as we go. And it's also worth pointing out too, this is a very, very waxy board, just like you see on all of these era Fenders, which is quite gross and not fun. So we will be, doing our best to kind of clean out the eyelets as we go for the ones we touch. But I imagine we're going to run into a lot of leaky voltage with this amplifier. So fingers crossed it's not the case, but also let's be realistic and plan on it just because. So without further ado, let's go ahead and fire up the soldering iron and get started. So if you've never seen me do this before, I will probably explain one pair and then probably just time lapse the rest so that it's not too long of a video. But I will go through step by step here on this first pair so that you guys that are trying to learn and do this yourselves can kind of follow along. So the first step, and a lot of people don't do this, but in my opinion, this is the best way to get a good quick solder connection, heat flowing, and be able to not have to stick on areas too long, is really just to add solder to the tip of the soldering iron first, make sure it's clean, use one of these, something along those lines to kind of just stab the tip in, and then add some fresh solder to the tip, and then that'll get the flow to happen a lot quicker with the old solder mixed with the hot iron. So on these, some era Fenders, the cathode bypass cap leads are actually what connect to the brass plate back here for the ground connections, this wire right here. However, on this era Fender, they don't do that. The leads weren't long enough. So we should be able to just heat it up. And I've got my soldering iron basically as hot as it'll go right now. So try and melt through this pretty quickly here. And we should be able to just pop this right up. So there you go. Now we will, it's pretty likely to lift up other leads and whatnot in a crowded eyelet like this. That's fine. Just make sure you note where everything was. And so we'll just add a bit more solder here and try and lift up this one as well. And there we go. So now we will go ahead and this side do the same sort of thing. And these ones take extra long as well because they've got all that wax on them. So just not ideal. Now do also note the direction of the positive versus the negative. So this side right here going up towards the knobs is the negative side for these, and the positive goes towards the tubes. So there's the first one. And on these Fenders, there's a lot of kind of stray wire everywhere. They're wired a lot less clean versus a brown face, black face tweed era. So you got to be careful. And also this wire, which is not cloth covered like the earlier Fenders, which is far superior. This wire burns and gets marks on it very easily. You'll see it often on just the stock amps that have just been worked on from the factory. The tips will look kind of yellow, and that's just from the heat and them discoloring. So there you go. We've got our two caps out. Now let's go ahead and compare here the modern version. So this is a 25 microfarad 25 volt, and this is a modern 25 microfarad 50 volt. So this is actually a more capable cap, but you can see it's, you know, maybe 50% the size. So these are great. Now this brand is Mod. These are very popular nowadays. I use them constantly. You'll see in most of my videos, this is what I use. They're very good quality caps for a very affordable price, which is a great combo. You know, especially in comparison to something like a Sprague, which is typically quite a bit more money and not necessarily any better. But they are black. So I will say, for me personally, my own amps, I don't typically do Mod just because I don't love the silver color. But an amp like this, you can see it's just a mess of, of colors. And it's very just chaotic in these 70s that, you know, I don't think color preference really applies in an amp like this. So it's not a downgrade in quality or performance or anything like that, but just aesthetically, not my favorite personally in my own amplifiers. But otherwise, I use them in probably 80-90% of amp work I do. So now we can see here kind of the remnants of just this nasty wax that pulls up here. And there's just, to get rid of all the wax realistically, what you have to do is, you know, basically to get it perfect is take all the components off and completely rid the board of the wax and then repopulate. That's just way too time consuming, not economically feasible. So we're not going to do that. What we will do is we're actually going to lift all of the components out though and see if we have enough room to spread the resistors out like a bow, like I showed before, and also clean the resistors out while we're doing that of any solder so that we are able to rid the eyelets of the wax and kind of any moisture around the eyelets to where we could have leaky voltage. Now, it's not really an issue necessarily with this area specifically, but it is an issue in other areas like there, for example, and a couple other places. So we're going to do the same thing, just heat it up and try and get these resistors up without bending the legs at all. Don't want to leave a mark on the legs. We're just trying to gently lift them up. That came out pretty easily. I've already measured all these resistors and they were fine. So we will be maintaining the stock resistors. There we go. We'll just put it off to the side there. Add a bit more solder. Okay, so now let's go ahead and try and clean out these eyelets here. So this is just a ground side. Now you notice all of this kind of pulling up around the eyelet. That is obviously the board getting really hot around the eyelet, and that's the wax melting. So that's not a bad thing. We do want to see that. And we'll just kind of get the last finishing touch here and just really make it nice and clean there. And then we'll do the same over here. Try and gently remove these wires. I like to use if I can find it, I like to use a dental pick like this. So I'm not gripping onto the fragile insulation of the wires. I can just kind of pull them. Should just pop up like that. Again, make sure you're, keeping your wires straight on where they're supposed to go. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and clean just some of the wax here. So you can do is just grab a little flathead, something, and just kind of scrub the wax just around the eyelets. Now I'm gonna grab a little isopropyl and just clean that up right there. And actually what tends to work better for me is naphtha. So let's hit it with a little bit of naphtha. Naphtha is nice because it evaporates very quickly, and it does a really good job of melting the wax. See, it just kind of clears it out pretty good. So we're not going, this is not a like a beauty thing. This is purely a performance thing. All right, that's a pretty significant difference there. Pretty happy with that. Let's go ahead and grab our resistors. We don't have a ton of lead length, but I think we should still be able to make this work. So I'm just going to clean that solder on the end of it a little bit. And on fenders, you always have the tolerance band, which is this silver band going towards the tubes here. So let's just kind of mock this up here a little bit. We're to go out. Get this ground back in there too while we're at it. And this can be a tight fit because you're trying to fit a lot of leads. And this is kind of why a lot of people twist the leads together of the capacitors. So if we don't have to do that, I'd kind of prefer not to do that, but we might have to, so we'll see. We'll see as we start getting it built out. So we bowed that resistor out a touch. Let's get the other one set up here. This might just be enough room for us to fit the two caps in between the two resistors. It's going to be tight, and I think we are going to have to twist the leads together to get it to fit in that eyelet because there's just not a lot of space. So only one will be going straight to ground, and the other one will be wrapping around it and then cut short. Something along those lines. Let's cut this end and see how close I got to getting it on the first try. So something along those lines there. That'll fit perfectly. Cool. So we can go ahead and trim these up here. All right, so we've got everything in on the ground side. So we're going to go ahead and solder in the ground side first, and then we'll take care of this in a second. And honestly, we could have fit both leads in there. There's enough room. It didn't look like it was, but I forget these mod caps are so small, the leads, if you look at the size versus the resistor, it's much smaller. So whenever I heat up the eyelet like this, I try and actually stand on the eyelet with the tip of the soldering iron while also touching the other elements in there. And then just keep adding solder until you get a dome like that. Try and replicate the original Fender domes, which you can kind of see. They're not great on this amplifier. This era is not known for the domes, but yeah. It's more of a pre-CBS kind of, well, I guess not pre-CBS. It's more of a thing of earlier Fenders. So let's get this lifted up a little bit. Like I said, I try and touch at least a corner of the eyelet to get some solder flowing. So the tricky part with these two is there's a big gap between this top board and the bottom board. So all the solder is wanting to suck down, which is kind of stopping us from being able to do the dome. Still possible, but it is a bit more difficult and not necessarily worth the extra effort there. When the rest of the original socket or the original joints here don't have a dome, so they look just like normal from factory. So we will go ahead and leave that as is and consider that done. So now we can move on. We got those two, so we got 5 more to go. So really quick, just wanted to mention that this is a 470 ohm. However, the schematic and layout calls for a 2.2K right here, and we were missing a cathode bypass cap. So we're going to return this back to what the Fender had on the schematic by replacing this with a 2.2K and then the additional cap. Alrighty, there we go. We've replaced all of the cathode bypass caps. Zoom out for you guys there. So all new mod 25 microfarad 50 volt caps. And we did do one resistor swap to match the schematic. And yeah, everything looks good. So I think before we end tonight, we will go ahead and replace this one tiny little 1/4 watt resistor here with a proper carbon comp 1/2 watt. So let's go ahead and grab one of those. That should be a, what, 1 meg? Got a nice new old stock Allen Bradley here. You can see it matches the original there because it is the same. So let's go ahead and remove this little guy. What a mess. Like an absolute rookie, I let the camera die. I didn't realize it was out of battery. But we're done. We installed the new 1 meg, you can see there. And we've got all the cathode bypass caps in here. And the other resistor, this was a, I believe, 2.2K, which was per the schematic. It had a 470 ohm before. And with that, we are good for tonight. So made lots of good progress. So to close this video out, we are going to go ahead and redo the ground connection for the 3-prong power cord. This is the factory 3-prong. And yeah, so you can see I showed this in the first video already, but this bolt had come loose and kind of wiggled itself over time and basically lifted the solder joint. It was not a good solder joint to the chassis in the first place. Obviously, it does look like there is some fresh solder kind of here next to some old solder potentially. So I think somebody might have tried to touch it up and just failed. But yeah, either way, we're going to go ahead and fix that. So we are going to be using the new iron. This is my Weller, what was the model? SP80. So this is my new old stock one I purchased off of eBay actually. And we'll give this a go as kind of an alternative to my normal giant iron, which is just humongous. So we're going to try with this little guy and see. It's definitely got the heat for getting us you know, a good connection, but it's got a very different tip on it. So I'm hoping I can be a bit more surgical with that chassis connection. But first thing we're going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and just bolt this in back just so I can hold this in place so I can try and pull out this wire. It's not a very long lead, so I don't want to have to necessarily cut it. So we'll just see what we're working with here. We'll try and loosen the wire up and pull it out just by heating this up first, and then we can kind of go from there. There we go. Okay, perfect. So now we can go ahead and remove that bolt. Hopefully it'll come off fairly easily. We did add some solder there, but I don't think we got a good connection to the chassis. So, all right, so now let's go ahead and clean this area up. We'll score the chassis and then and go ahead and get some solder here, and we should be able to just get it right next to that same spot. Probably right about there is what I'm thinking. And we will clean it with some isopropyl here. So now I'm just going to go ahead and score the chassis. But first we're going to put this transformer bolt back on here. No longer need that washer. I like to use just a flathead and just kind of get some scratches in there. You just want to get a little bit of a texture going for the solder to stick to. Try and do a little bit of a crosshatch pattern. I've always been so jealous of Lyle over at Psionic Audio. His chassis ground connections, they're just so perfect. I would love to learn how he does it and get you know, to his level where it's just aesthetically beautiful. I haven't really nailed that yet. Mine will always be functional, but he definitely wins the aesthetic award. So that feels pretty good to me. I can feel a slight bit of texture to it, which is kind of exactly what I want. Now we'll go ahead and clean it one more time with isopropyl. Now what I'm going to do is first add some solder to the chassis. Let's get some solder on the soldering iron itself. We'll just kind of get some solder flowing to the chassis. So we got a little puddle there to solder onto. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit more. That looks good. And now we're just going to try and add this in here and just hold it for a quick second and we should be okay. All right, so now that it's held in place, we can go ahead and get something to just kind of hold it a bit longer, and we can add more solder. This is where I always struggle a little bit, to be honest. So I try really hard not to crush the insulation here. So I'm going to try and hold it just kind of there. But first, we're going to get some more solder onto the tip here. Get a healthy amount. And then we'll just hold that there and just kind of get some solder on there. It's a really good connection. All right, that looks pretty good to me. Let's let that cool for a second and then visually inspect it. All right, we got a long way to go to get the perfect little dome that Lyle gets, but that's going to be extremely solid. That's not going anywhere, and I feel pretty good about that. The one thing with these is obviously you're dealing with a lot of heat, so you don't want to just keep redoing it because you're going to definitely burn up the insulation on the wire. Do I want to do it one more time? The perfectionist in me wants me to do it one more time, so we'll do it one more time and not heed my own caution here. Is that better or worse? I honestly can't tell. Looks about the same to me, but we will go ahead and stick with that. So now let's let that cool for a second, and then we'll just clean off the flux so it's nice and shiny around the corners, and we should be good to go, but that's definitely not going anywhere. So we're getting better at it. New tool. I do like the way this is a much more manageable, maneuverable tip here, but still I want to get better at that, so I will get better at that. Again, this has absolutely nothing to do with the actual integrity of that solder joint. That is going nowhere. That is infinitely better than what was there before. Pretty happy with that overall. Little metal flakes here and there. We will take care of that when we actually are finished with the amplifier. But yeah, that's we'll call it a night there.